Welcome, friends, to Tactically Sound on the Yetti Den with me, Matt, and my friend Spencer. We are going to be talking today about 10 games that have captured both of our time and adoration. We've picked 5 games each for you guys today that we've spent a significant amount of time exploring.
Right. And we kind of want to explore the idea of why do we spend hundreds of hours in a game? So for me, I think the number one reason is that a game has become a part of my day. Like, can you think of any games in your life, and maybe it's a part of this list already, but like whether it's current or in the past where it became a part of your day? Like
a daily grind, you're saying?
Or like not necessarily like it to me it shouldn't feel like a grind, but something where you're just like, I gotta check in, like I gotta play, like, oh, I have a break, I have a moment, I'm gonna play some of this game.
Oh, totally. I mean, definitely all the ones on this list, but right now off the top of my head, I'm already thinking Animal Crossing.
Right, that's one that I had in my head too.
Yeah, I love Animal Crossing. That game is so good at making you check in. I think the real time helps with that, and the seasons. And then just like the ability that the new one that you can just customize your whole entire island, not just the decorations, but also the landscape, the elevation. You can get so creative in that game.
Yeah, for me, I think for a game to become a part of my day, it has to fuse with like Mo and I's schedule together. And so the game that this is a part of my list, but it's Kingdom 2 Crowns, because we would like specifically collect throughout the week Trader Joe's snacks. And like we had this red comfy couch that we bought from our neighbors, and we would like play music as the soundtrack. So I would like go through Leonard Cohen, and then I'd find other artists as she would play and discover. And so it became like this whole scene together. And that's kind of how I describe cozy gaming, is the world inspires you, but also like what you're doing while you're playing, which leads me into another element of this, which for me is communal experiences. Like, what game comes to mind when you think of communal experiences? Like something that you played with other people in your house, or something that like fused the memory where you're like, oh, right, I think of that time doing this with those people.
Okay. You guys don't know me. I love Lord of the Rings. First one that popped in my head, Return of the King. Dude, that game was epic. I always played that game with my brother. Another one just to throw in there too, I'm a huge Super Smash Bros. Fan. So those 2 games, boom, right in my head. I think Bro Time with my brothers as a kid. Oh, my sister snuck in there too. It's not just for the guys, but you know what I'm saying? Those are the best co-op memories I've had in my life.
Yeah, for me, like the Switch has kind of become the console for spending a lot of hours with, because I could travel with it. And so like knowing, oh, Mo and I are going on a trip, and I want, like, what game do I want to remember when we're on this trip? And like when you have jet lag and you're like you're eating, you know, what we would do is like in Italy, like we would go get pizza, like walk through Rome, get pizza, bring it back, and just chill. And like those kind of experiences are my favorites. Like when you have jet lag, you're tired, but you're in a cool city. So it's like you go, you get food, you see a record store, and then you come back and you play your games. And like the Switch allows you to do that.
It does.
And the game that comes to mind for me with that is the Banner Saga, is like being on trains, being in hotels, and just like playing this game that had an amazing fantasy world, which again is going to be on my list.
Okay.
But yeah, I think about like backlog killers. Like, how do we as gamers get to hundreds of hours in the game when there's so many games? Like, do you have any tips or tricks? Like, you know, when we get to your list, is there any reason why you were able to carve out the time for these specific series? Like any gamer hacks that kept you synced up with the game?
So I have to admit, some of these that I'm going to mention on the list, I was able to play during my younger years in high school and college, where you get those summers off and you got, how am I going to fill some of this time? And those video games really help. Now, if you are a working man like us, How now do I find the time? Well, I actually, just like anything else, have to schedule it. And I have to even think a little bit more, and it's fun in its own way, think a little bit more critically, like I have my own checklist now that I want to accomplish in, like, say if I'm playing a game like Skyrim. And I might even set the bar kind of low for myself. Like, today in Skyrim, I'm just going to go through this one dungeon and see what loot I got. And if I'm feeling up for it, I'm going to sell it too. So I make more approachable goals for myself. And I don't give myself a due date, like when I need to finish this. And then if something else comes up, like I want to start diving into another game, I try to not make that a big deal. I save my Skyrim file and I jump into Animal Crossing and start working on that and visit some of my friends' islands, or me and my wife are playing trading turnips. So you just have to, my best advice is, if you are into it, just like anything when you're an adult, you have to set time for it and create the goals for yourself, and don't compare yourself to others. Enjoy it. It's a hobby.
I love that. That's all really good advice. Yeah, the thing that I've really enjoyed is when a gaming operating system or like platform or console allows you to view your games by most played, because to me that helps my ADHD, which I get a ton of dopamine, and I always have, from finding new titles and having friends over and be like, dude, I found this new game. Here's why I think it's going to be good. Let's play it and see if it is as good as we thought it was. That is a big part of my personality. So the goal is to find a game that Mo and I will spend 100 hours in. So we'll set our Switch to show us the most played games, and then we try to stick with the game as long as possible to have that like game thumbnail work its way up the top of like all of the backlog. So with Vampire Survivors, I was like, Mo, I think we're gonna like this. She started playing. I was like, "Ooh, you're on the 4th row. Now it's on the 3rd row. Now we're at the top row. Now we finally hit 200 hours." And it's like, then it's like you kind of take a little bit of break and you pick another game to like work up the list. And it helps because like I idealize certain games. I'll be like, ooh, one day I'm going to have time and I'm going to play that game and I'm going to love it. And it's cool because it's like you get to test that theory. Like, was this game as like addicting and deep and exciting as I thought it was going to be? Some games you bounce off of and some are really sticky. So to start off our list, I'll get us started. You kind of created a great segue. Mine is the Elder Scrolls series, particularly Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim, because I kind of treat them like they're one game. Like I look at each game as an extension of the other and as a window into more details of like, oh, here's Skyrim, but through a book in Oblivion, or here's, Morrowind, like I'm meeting someone from Morrowind, or I'm reading a history of Morrowind in Oblivion. And I think that is what makes me most excited about playing all 3 games, and why I get more value out of going back to games like Skyrim. Because when I've played more Oblivion, I'm looking for those tie-ins, those narrative moments where I'm like in a dungeon and I see a book that I just read in Oblivion, or a book that I found in all 3 games. And so in that way, it's kind of like you're Indiana Jones. You're like diving for lore connecting inside the game. Yeah, and you're connecting the dots, and you're seeing if the representation of those lands are transferable between games. Like when they describe Skyrim and then you go visit Skyrim, does it feel like it's a part of the same universe? And so that, I think, is why I put Elder Scrolls in my list, is because I've always played Elder Scrolls and I always feel like there's more lore that I can get in a playthrough, in a run. And so that's why I start with the Elder Scrolls. But what is your... Oh, go ahead.
I just want to make a comment on Elder Scrolls. I think that's what really adds and cranks up the hours, is all the lore and all the reading that you can do. And it just has that real-time pace too. Like, takes a while to get somewhere, got to go through this, read things, right? Has that meaningful pace, I would say.
Yeah, and I'll add that, like, when I showed Mo Skyrim on our Switch, I was shocked at how quickly we got to 100 hours. I was like, oh my God, this took no time. It's the best game for getting lost in a world, not because like you're gonna have all this dopamine the whole time, but because you'll just like check how long you've been playing and being like, holy crap, I did not realize. It just makes time go by really quickly because you're invested in the moment to moment, and then you look back and you're like, whoa, I just spent 4 hours that went by really quickly. So I think that's a factor and why the Elder Scrolls does work really well when you're looking to spend a lot of time with the game. So go ahead and give us your game.
Yeah, so my first one that I gotta mention is The Witcher 3. Like, if you, again, I always talk about Lord of the Rings, but I sometimes have a fantasy and an urge to roleplay as an Aragorn Strider, a ranger type character. And if you're looking for a game where you're just like, I need to play on that fantasy a bit, The Witcher 3 does a really good job at making you feel like a ranger. You know, this game's all about hunting, tracking, uncovering mysteries, trailing these monsters, and eventually fighting them. And this game does so well at creating this tactical monster hunting system that leverages what we get in the books, which is, you know, you learn that these Witchers are, well, they're genetically mutated, so they can cast spells, and certain spells are better and have sort of different advantages against different monsters, as well as crafting different potions. So like you're collecting like the different flowers, the different weeds, the different roots, shrubs, and making these potions that weaken monsters, either through like putting a special oil on your sword or like throwing a certain type of bomb at them. And so these tactics, plus the extensive, great dialogue trees with these well-developed characters, makes learning about this world and just being in this world, the gameplay, more exciting and rewarding. And that's why I always come back, and I can easily spend a lot of time in The Witcher. There's a lot more I can say with this game, just like, you know, Skyrim. We could talk about the music, but I would say those are the points that really stick with me with The Witcher and bring me back every time, eventually ultimately beating the game on Death March, the hardest difficulty.
Yeah, no, I think you're totally right. And the tactical monster hunting system is a great reminder that this game is not Skyrim. There is a kind of maybe like a correct way to play this game. Like it's there's not like as many open-ended approaches. It's like you are going to want to study the bestiary. You're going to want to use your oils, your potions, and it is a Witcher simulator. And I think bringing in the Tolkien element totally works because Mo's also a fan of Tolkien, and playing The Witcher made her go like, oh, they need to make a Lord of the Rings game like that, which may be a Shadow of Mordor, maybe not, but like,
not quite.
I think The Witcher is much better at incorporating the universe's lore and making you feel like you're living inside of the book's world. And I think that's what works so well with it. So I'll go ahead and give my next game. Please. So Kingdom Two Crowns, I mentioned it at the top. The reason why I think this game is easy to sink a lot of hours in is because, one, the ambience is just great. Like, it feels like you're in a special world. Like, it's not something you've ever seen before, but then at the same time, it has that familiarity like The Witcher does, where you kind of feel like you're in a pixelated Lord of the Rings forest. Like you're this like elf kingdom or this kingdom of men fighting off hordes of evil. And there is something really calming and spooky about it. And the fact that you can turn on this game and instantly be transported into a fantasy world where you kind of can create your own storyline, you know, like you really, in that way, it's like a role-playing game where it's like, because there isn't dialogue and scripts, you're filling in the gaps yourself, and you're telling the person you're playing with or the person who's watching you like, oh, I'm sending my men out, like the tree cutters, he's gonna have to fight for himself, I can't go get him, you know. And you start narrating your journey, and so in that way it's very sandboxy, but there's a huge strategic element. There's a lot of kind of lore and or game mechanics buried beneath the UI that you have to learn from experience. And I think Mo really became an expert at this game. And so when she would look at, you know, people's explanations of stuff, she'd be like, that's totally wrong. Because like you can look at the game from the outside looking in and think you understand something and that you're ready to teach people how to play this game. But it's one of those games like you have to know what the patch changed. You have to know what trophies are broken. You have to know like what strategies don't actually work when you're trying to accomplish like a greater goal versus like a short-term goal. And so it's a game that you really start to crack the code of, and you become almost like a hacker the more you play it, because you're understanding how to exploit the broken systems. You're understanding like what systems are advertised as doing something but maybe don't actually do what they say they're doing. And so in that way it's very addicting, and I think the simplicity lures you in, and then you realize it's a much deeper game.
I also really appreciate the 2D side scroller and a set pace for your character. You just really get to appreciate the music and art style of the game. And there's I played this game a lot post-surgery. It was like the best post-surgery game. It just calmed me down, helped me get into the moment and relax. It has such a great cozy vibe into it, and that's why I actually spent a long time in that game.
Love it. Go ahead and give us your next. This one's more of a series, right?
Yeah, so Final Fantasy as a series, but I'm also thinking mostly to the most recent one I played, which is the remake series. And I've sunk a lot of hours into playing this new series or new version of Final Fantasy VII. Gosh, what keeps me coming back and just wanting to play it and more are like really two things. It's the story mixed with that music. So the emotional driven story is just so good. It's hard to beat Final Fantasy when it comes to this. And then on top of that, this game has games within games. Like we get a ton of great fun mini games that you would love to play on like a mobile device on your phone. And so I could just easily open up Final Fantasy and just only play a card game for like an hour or two, or play another tactical mini game as well. And you just can't get enough of them. And then you forget, I'm playing Final Fantasy. I should probably continue the story. So this is what really ranks up the hours for me, is games within games. Have you ever played a game like that where there's games within games?
Right. I mean, Witcher 3 comes to mind. Like the mini game in Witcher 3, it was so good they did a spin-off. So it's like
Gwent.
I'm all about that with an RPG. I think it makes the game world feel even more lived in when you're doing that. I also, just the little bit I've played of Cyberpunk, that Witcher horse game in the arcade in the bar, I was like obsessed with getting a high score on that one. That was one of the best mini games I've played in a game.
So we're fans of card games. If card games are in a game, an RPG, it just fits.
Right. Totally. Oh, another great classic mini game, Time Splitters 2, has a snake game on the module, and that game was so good, and the song in that game is really good too. So yeah, I'll go ahead and go next. So the Banner Saga, so I mentioned this at the top, it has this 1970s art style that's like my dream art style, because I grew up when we heard that Fellowship of the Ring was going to come to theaters. We were so excited.
Yep.
And so we rented or bought the DVDs of the animated series. And when you watch that series, it has this creepy kind of like otherworldly feel to it with rotoscoping, but it also has this beautiful hand-drawn style. And so the Banner Saga was inspired by the artist behind that, the artist behind Sleeping Beauty. And so there's something about the art style of the Banner Saga where I could just spend hours looking at that game. But then it follows through with the game design. Like, it is not just a beautiful game to look at, it's deep. And Mo and I were playing the Banner Saga on PS4, getting trophies, and I found out that you could grind like a lot in the camps by doing these like simulated battles, but it was leveling us up. And I was like, I don't know if it's supposed to do this as much as it is. So we just exploited that so hard, and we're leveling up our guys and like using all these puzzles. And because the combat is like chess, right? Like any great tactical game. So there's these puzzles that they kind of put you in, and figuring out the best way to execute it to get the maximum amount of XP. Like, that's what makes strategic RPGs so great in my head.
Like Fire Emblem does that too with the mock battles, where you can just spam that and do it over and over again.
I love that. Like, if it feels elegant and it feels like, it's tucked away, not forced through, like, you're not forced to spend this time, but it's tucked away and you could go do that as you're cheating the system and like leveling up your guys to just own people. And then when you have choice and consequence, like you do with the Banner Saga, where it's like, I might be able to keep some of these people alive in the story because of how God mode they are. Like, those types of things are what makes the strategic RPG so addicting. So I've played a ton of hours on the Switch. It's one of those games that I like to own on every system, because it's like, it's the game that speaks to my art style desires the most. So go ahead and tell us your next game.
Yes, my next game is Elden Ring. Cue the music, Spencer. No. That game is just, you guys already know. Do I even need to say anything? It's just epicness on epicness. Starting from this epic intro, when you walk out into Limgrave, you push open those doors. It's just endless possibilities of exploration and loot and, I guess, builds to explore. I've never played a game so dark and so intense, meaning like in the skill base of the action gameplay. I've never played something where I had to actually really study the timing and also what weapon type or magic do I want to use for my build. There's so much depth and variety in this game than any other action RPG I've ever played. I really want you to play this game, Spencer. I want you to get a PC and download the co-op mod. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, you guys gotta and you have Elden Ring on PC, you gotta play with your friends with this seamless co-op mod. It is so good. I actually just want base games to be like that. I feel like that took a lot of passion out of me, Spencer. Elden Ring, you gotta get it.
I am very excited to play Elden Ring. I've played a little bit of it and I loved the world. Again, it has a little bit of those medieval colors that I love, like the reds and the yellows and the armor. Like, when you can figure out a way to make red and yellow look really regal and mysterious, like a 1970s Dungeons and Dragons thing, or like even like when you look at old medieval art and that like color.
Yes.
I just love that. And so it has some of that in the opening game where you're like visiting a camp and there's just these soldiers that are probably like basic low level guys.
Oh, those guys.
The fact that
they're easy
so
now
cool
for me, Spencer.
yeah. Like, I just love that when a game can nail base armor and make you as a new player excited to get it. I think that's always really cool.
So good. What about you?
My next one is Battle Brothers. Talking about armor,
Yes.
This game does armor, I think, maybe the best out of a lot of RPGs, because the armor is a language. It's like when you look at the map, you can spot kind of, if you know the armor well, you don't need a UI. You can just see, oh, that's a level 100 armor. That's a level 140 helmet. And then you got to bust out your daggers because you don't want to break their armor. You want to steal the armor. So you got to strategically look for who has the worst armor, send your axe guys and your mace guys after that person, one shot them, get them out of the way, and then keep alive the guys who you want to steal their armor from. So that type of depth and visual information without really an over reliance on a UI, I think is what makes Battle Brothers such an intricately developed game. You could step on a body and loot them in battle and grab, if you didn't break their shield, if you didn't break their helmet, you could grab what they have. If there's undead that, like, say they start as living soldiers and you take them out, and then there's a necromancer raising them from the dead, you could steal their weapons before they get raised from the dead. So all they have is like punching and biting. It's like all these little details make it more fun. And I texted you because, you know, it's one of those roguelites where it gives you a tutorialized start, but then it kind of fuses into a regular playthrough once you just like kind of get through the opening. And I finished that campaign at level, or at day 200, and it was like, do you want to keep playing? You know, you'll just keep going until you see all that there is to see on the map. And it's like, I'm only just scratched the surface with it. Like, there's so many great armor sets that I haven't gotten. You know, I'll joke with Mo, like, she'll ask, oh, did you buy any good bros today? And because, like, you go to the market, you buy bros, you read about their descriptions, you could try them out if you want to pay some money to see if they have any special perks before you buy them. And I'll be like, no, I just buy like $100 bros. Maybe the most I'll buy is a $500 bro. But sometimes you get these bros who have like 3 stars in their swords or bows, and you're like, dude, this guy is a gem. I got him for $100, and now I'm gonna name him the Reaper and give him a giant axe, and he's gonna one-shot people. And he was at a value. But I was telling her, you know, there's bros that are like $10,000, and she's like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, the most money I've had in this game is probably $3,000 to $4,000. So you get a sense of scale on a map seed, how long you could play and how much value there is. And you just get addicted. Like, if you're on a good run, you're like, no, I'm going to go turn in this quest, get my money. And then, oh, there's another quest that I can do. Yeah. Take out this camp, you know, over here. Yeah. And then before you know it, it's like midnight. So I think this is a great follow-up to Banner Saga. If you loved Banner Saga and you need something that has more gameplay, maybe like depth, I would say, because it's less of a linear story. I mean, really, there is not so much of a linear story. There's great writing, but it's more procedurally developed events as you play through. The writing is great. Like, you'll get full-blown essays as to what's happening. And, you know, the joke will be like, you know, you'll have a character named like Talgor the Brute, and he's named the Brute because I've noticed that he's got these certain perks and these debuffs that make him a little bit chaotic. And it'll be like, Tolger, you know, attacked a man in the plaza and was fighting 5 guys, but Salgar the Wise talked him down. And it's like, the way that the systems work, if you name your characters based off of their perks and personalities, they'll end up doing things that like fulfill the name you gave them just because you name them off of what their character is like. And you do that so you can remember in battle who is fighting. It's like, oh wait, that's my Reaper. Like, I don't want him to die and he's at 1 health. Move him far away because he's like got great bro stats. So that's Battle Brothers. Great strategy RPG. Definitely, you will spend so many hours. Yeah, really good.
That sounds like something I'd like, because I've been noticing with my tactical RPGs that, you know, I grew up playing Fire Emblem. I love it, but I'm playing and trying out other ones now, and I'm going, man, I wish that Fire Emblem moved in this direction or added these systems into their game. So hopefully now I think these games are getting more popular with people. So hopefully Fire Emblem picks up on this, that people can handle more systems than just the basic kind of chess formula. So I'm excited to see what happens with the genre. For me, speaking of tactics though, my next one, and if you guys have been following our channel for a while, you hear me mention it often as well, is Baldur's Gate 3. Oh my goodness. Honestly, I got like over 100 hours with this game and I have not even beaten it yet. I have so many campaigns with different friends and even alone, solo, just because the character creation is so good. And I've never played Dungeons and Dragons before this game. This game got me into dungeons. It's a whole new type of game, guys. And so there's like these like the skill checks that you experience invisibly in other games like Witcher 3 or maybe Skyrim and stuff. They're actually more upfront and present, and that was fun and engaging for me to like make new characters and see, okay, what kind of dialogue trees do I get if I, am playing more of a thief instead of a warrior or a warlock versus a small, even like small, your race affects everything, like a small little hobbit. So I really also enjoy the party managing. And I think the turn-based gameplay is one of the best in the genre, just because, just like you said with Battle Brothers, the environment, like there's systems that affect the turn-based gameplay, and based on the skill checks of your character, you're going to have different outcomes. So there's just so much. This game has so much depth. I can't even give it enough credit with just me talking about it. You guys are going to have to play it yourselves. This game has infinite replay in my mind. I've never played a game where I felt like, oh, I could potentially come back to this game for the rest of my life and still have something new to explore. And so that's how I felt about Baldur's Gate 3, and it had to make it onto this list.
Yeah, this is one of those games that I'm really excited to play, and I'm glad that I haven't played it yet, because I'm building up my skill sets with other games. Like, I'm relearning tactics and environmental stuff with Banner Saga, or with Battle Brothers. And Battle Brothers, like what you're describing, has a running almost like console list where it'll be like, Delgor hit 1 point on your shield, or like so-and-so miss. And like you have this event that's like screen that's telling you all the rolls that are happening. And so you just start to get used to RNG and how all of that works. So I'm excited. Baldur's Gate, it's one I have my eye on, but I'm earning my way through. I'm actually, I have a couple interviews with some CRPG developers that will go up, and I'm getting advice, and I'm being told I need to play Baldur's Gate 1 before I go to Baldur's Gate 3 to honor the legacy of these CRPG guys. And like one of the guys is like, you got to go to the beginning, start at the beginning, don't just jump into Baldur's Gate 3. So I'm gonna take that advice and work my way up so I don't get destroyed in Baldur's Gate 3.
All right, so guys, if you want to maintain your honor, do what Spencer says. But if you're a rebellious thug like me, jump into that Baldur's Gate 3.
Right. Different kinds of ADHD, basically. like we both get dopamine. My dopamine is like, I'm going to start at the very beginning and like idolizing that experience. And then there's another dopamine that's like, I'm going to play the new hot thing right now. Yeah. So Vampire Survivors is my last game.
Awesome.
I love the idea of Castlevania, and which is heavily inspired by Vampire Survivors. Vampire Survivors feels just like a offshoot of Castlevania. They've even collaborated on a DLC, but there's something about that fantasy world that I adore. Gothic horror is like something that I feel like I slowly realized I'm obsessed with. Probably going back to Spawn and Gargoyles and stuff like that I grew up with, but Castlevania, vampire stuff, it just feels like it belongs in every good RPG. And Vampire Survivors, like Kingdom, to me has the soul of an RPG. Like whether it's actually an RPG, I don't know, but the feeling of choosing your character, looking at the stats, organizing your build, min-maxing, looking at the terrain, looking at the enemy types, looking at your goals. And maybe that's just a great action game, but to me, there's so many deep systems. There's card-based systems. There are statistics. There are perks, power-ups, all of these things that make the gameplay really addicting. And so this is a game that has the most gameplay hours on our Switch. It's at the top mightily. We haven't even played the DLC yet. We're cleaning up like 3 to 4 last little things before we've 100% completed the game. But really, if you like Castlevania, you like Diablo, you like Kingdom, then Vampire Survivors is that addictive, arcadey action bullet hell game with a sneaky statistic-based RPG system underneath it. So check out Vampire Survivors.
Yes. I still need to check that one out. That game goes on sale, and I'm like, should I get it? Should I get it? Because it's like only like $2, right? And it's like on sale.
Get it on the Switch. It is a handheld game through and through. You want to play it in bed. It is not like a sit on the couch and play game. It's bringing it to wherever you go and playing it as in little spurts.
Maybe this holiday season, you'll see me on there. Which leads me, speaking of the Switch, to my last game. And as everyone can see, if you're watching and not just listening, I am a Nintendo nerd, okay? I do like their games a lot. And so I had to put at least one on there. And you guys know what I'm going to pick? You guys know? Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, guys. Now, some people don't like this game because they don't appreciate the new mechanics. They're more like old Legend of Zelda fans. But if you grow with the series, guys, really dive in to see what this one's all about, you're going to like it because it has everything that the old Legend of Zelda adventures have. But they've built on top of it new physics and mechanics to where you're not just stuck on that ground anymore. You can go up, you can go down. There's a whole new layer and to this game. It now doesn't just feel flat. It feels, in a way, more 3D than it's ever been. And so I love the exploration and adventure. There's so much to explore. I've never played a game that has this much to explore. Also, in terms of puzzles, these puzzles are so brain tickling, Spencer. They're addicting. They're fun to figure out. And you know me, I loved, like I was mentioning, Final Fantasy, the games within games. And I think Legend of Zelda does this really well at making you feel like you're playing another game within its game, using its same avatar, its same character, instead of like entering a whole new, like a card game, if you will, like Gwent, right? It's seamless this way. And so that keeps me coming back to it, but also, just like Elden Ring, collecting loot, collecting gear, collecting tools that are going to help me defeat greater enemies and ultimately our bad boy boss, Ganondorf, or Calamity Ganon in this case, right? So I had to throw that on there. It is so good. And if you don't like the game, all right, fine, don't play it. But you guys have to, if you haven't played it yet, you got to give it a chance. It's one of the best titles on the Switch currently.
I'm excited. I consider my introduction to Zelda Minish Cap. Nate and I, we started that, and I want to go finish that at his house. We probably will when our wives are making tamales for Christmas. So I'm going to try and finish Minish Cap because that is the game that speaks to me the most out of Zelda titles. So I'm going to try to finish that and eventually work my way up to Breath of the Wild because I have no idea how to play a Zelda game. It's got these Castlevania like elements to it, where it confuses me. Same thing with Metroid. So I'm learning as we say on the show, the gaming literacy to understand how you kids would play these Nintendo games. This was not my upbringing. The most Nintendo games I played was like Desert Storm or something, or what was it called? It was like Desert Strike. It's like a helicopter game.
There's a ton of great games like on the GameCube alone, Spencer. And I really recommend, because you appreciate art style, you should give Wind Waker a shot. It's one of my favorite in all of the series. And it's a good way to like kind of experience what old Legend of Zelda was like what Legend of Zelda is, so that when you get to Breath of the Wild or even Tears of the Kingdom, it's not going to feel so daunting like, wow, there's a lot of different mechanics and possibilities in this game. It kind of reminds me of how, if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons in real life, if you don't have the imagination of what you can do in the game, right? You're not going to know what to try and how to problem solve as well as the person who's has that video game literacy of like, this existed in another game. Can I do it in this game? Right. So I would say go back, play that, maybe play some Ocarina of Time. And I think they have that on the Nintendo 64 online with the Switch right now. So try some of those games out, Spencer. And I think you'll get it on there, get adjusted to it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think Nate and Maura are my Zelda evangelists working on getting me into Zelda. So I'll go through the games with them, and they could get me through the frustrating parts.
Yes.
One last thought: the olive branch for a Zelda player with Nintendo and a kid who grew up with Gothic horror, the in between is Darksiders. If you've ever played Darksiders, it's basically a Gothic horror Zelda game. So I've played that. I got stuck on a boss that I think is bugged out, and I need to restart to make sure I have full power to beat it. But really great game, really cool atmosphere, and I'm told it is very much like a Zelda game in solving the environmental puzzles and the Metroidvania, like going back, unlocking doors, going back to areas that you've been to before, and all of that. So that's our episode of 10 fantasy worlds we spent hundreds of hours in. Let us know, what are your titles and why are you spending hundreds of hours in a game? Because I think that is what's most interesting about a game and how it clicks and the memories that it forms with you. So Matt, where can people follow JumbyJumbwa?
You can follow JumbyJumbwa on Instagram or YouTube at JumbyJumbwa. I'll see you guys there.
And you're already on the Yetti Den, so subscribe, and we will see you guys all next time. Later.
Yeah,
bye.
Peace.